Hello. I'm going to be talking about hypocrisy. It's always interesting when people accuse you of that because quite often they don't know what they mean. Hello, Korean man. Now, John Vance has accused me of hypocrisy without specifying the particularities of my alleged hypocrisy. Now, as I understand it, hypocrisy is when you are yourself doing the thing that you are accusing other people of. So if you're accusing somebody of being dishonest, you are actually equally dishonest, if not more so. So that is what I understand to be hypocrisy. So if I'm, for example, a prostitute or a slut, I shouldn't really be going around calling other people who are even less promiscuous than me sluts. That's an example I can think of. And because, if they knew about my sexual history, they might say, well, who are you to tell us to not do this when you do this thing far worse? Or, words to that effect. And a common expression in England is to say, you're the pot calling the kettle black. So I know Korean man's more interested in the coronavirus than abstract analyses of the vice of hypocrisy. But I must soldier on with my subject. We can deal with that later. And I think even the coronavirus has some elements of hypocrisy. Okay, I'm basically saying it's an overreaction. People are going to die. They're probably dying of fright rather than anything else, because as any physician will tell you, your state of mind determines your recovery. So if you think you're going to die when all you have is flu, you might very well die and catch up, because you're already physically vulnerable, coupled with emotional vulnerability, and that is why I keep going back to God, and and even if he doesn't really exist, I think he's the idea of him is so seductive as to make people want to believe in him, and once they decide that they want to believe in him, and the evidence is 50-50, they will find themselves inclining into belief, and thereby leading a better life. And if those at the top of our society, our political classes, chose to believe and impose, and it will have to be imposed, and I'm not going to pretend anything else, a theocracy, then I think it would be well worth the effort. So these are things that should be discussed, but I think because of the hypocrisy of so many people, they dare not. They're going to say democracy is sacred. Democracy is the sacred cow of the West, and anyone who undermines it, who challenges it, who asks uncomfortable questions about it is a heretic, a traitor, a subversive, a revolutionary, etc., etc., when, of course, every movement is revolutionary or counter-revolutionary to the previous one. So all we are left with is to have a civilized, rational debate about the benefits and disbenefits of the current and proposed regime. And the crowning hypocrisy of the West is its pretense that it believes in free speech and that it doesn't crush dissent using all methods at its disposal, all the methods at the disposal of the state. So it is this hypocrisy that I cannot bear, and to be accused of hypocrisy by a former secular Koranist is, well, a little galling. The thing is, I tend to think I've won the argument when people accuse me of, oh, you're this, you're that. And I ask, very reasonably, I might add, how am I, this, whatever you just called me? And in his case, it was hypocrisy. I am a hypocrite. Let's see how he answers. Usually they melt away. I never hear from them again when I ask them to give further and better particulars of their claim. And I'm afraid hypocrisy is, well, it's not called a vice exactly. In fact, no, who was it? It was a Frenchman. I want to get my Frenchman right. Hypocrisy is the tribute that vice pays to virtue, said a cynical Frenchman, and of course it was La Rochefoucauld. What did he mean by this? It means that even the hypocrite knows what he should be saying and doing, even though his own standards fall beneath it. So, yeah, it's better than not knowing that you're breaking the rules. It's better to be, it is a mark of civilization to understand that there are rules and you are in a way upholding those rules, even though your own standards fall far below it. So this is clearly a vice that all of us fall into. I try not to do that because I try to speak my mind. So when somebody says that I'm being a hypocrite, I really would like to, I want to know a little bit more. And when they do their hit and run tactic, then, I don't think they have a claim at all. So you can't really say how exactly I'm hypocritical. So I get, this is a previous video, and John Vance has, said in it sort of, it's just really annoying now. He's always quoting the Koran like a religious fanatic. I don't do that because, well, I know it wouldn't go down well with you lot, and I find it very irritating. So let me read what he actually posted in my previous video entitled "Degenerate Western Man Can No Longer Understand the Principle of the Thing." Am I accusing him of anything? What is this principle of the thing that? Well, I'm just saying that a political activist should have the principle of political activism, and he's learning Arabic. He's doing unrelated things. He's trying to snuggle up to his new Muslim community, and he is abandoning political activism as I see it, because he declined to engage with me because, well, I don't know why is he declining to engage with me. I am, after all, the greatest political polemicist around. I mean, you can't ask for better if you're a boxer. You are boxing with the world heavyweight champion, aren't you? I mean, who is better than me? They all melt away, these nationalists who have bigger channels, who won't have me on because they don't like what I say. That is the tactic of censorship. You think that by ignoring somebody, they will not get the legitimacy and the publicity that they need to propagate their ideas. So in this regard, the anti-establishment parties and the establishment, well, not parties because they're not as organized as to form for themselves a political party. I guess it's a movement, a bit like the hippie movement, because there's no leader, or is it a kind of bowel movement? I don't know. Anyway, this is not something I really identify myself with. I'm basically somebody who has an idea. The legal system that is secular Koranism, and I am selling it. I am selling it to the political establishment. I know they're not interested. They don't want to talk about it. But the anti-establishment parties should at least want to talk about it with me, but they're too disorganized, too degenerate, maybe they don't trust themselves. So, obviously, if they don't like my idea, then they would have to say, well, our idea is better, and it is, whatever it is, and then they'll have to argue that their idea is better than my idea, but they don't, do they? They'll always just say, well, we'll just have to. I mean, what's the most? What have they been saying? The alt-right. Okay, there's one in America, Faustian Spirit. He says, let's do it through local politics, which is stupid. Then there's Mark Collett, who says, let's do it through local politics, which is stupid. Because, what they're doing is we're going to go undercover, we're not going to reveal our views, and we'll just be active in local politics, which is really the most awful kind of politics there is. I would just go into a coma after I fall asleep at council meetings, and that would be the end of me. So, no, I don't recommend that, because it is really deadly. If you want to engage in political activism, you have to talk politics. You have to say controversial things to your political associates, to those who oppose you and your political associates. You have to be talking politics, and that is the essence of political activism. So in what regard am I being hypocritical on this, John Vance? You're the one who is saying, I'm going to put politics on the back burner now. I'm learning Arabic and saying my prayers in Arabic. In the meantime, he is accusing me of being hypocritical. And I said I was going to read out a comment of his on my previous video, and here it is. He says, by Allah, the only ones who take this Ummah backwards are the cowards and the ignorant among us, who neither have the spine to speak the truth nor the comprehension to understand the deen, i.e. religion, properly. They make excuses for the corruption around us and only have the, quote, courage, unquote, to attack those without influence. I suppose meaning himself. But when they deal with the wealthy or the politically connected, they are like a submissive pet who sits when told to sit. He might mean me, but as far as meeting those who are wealthy or politically well connected, it is actually my complaint that everyone is such a low status, low income, low education loser. So I haven't met anyone well connected or wealthy at all. The well connected and wealthy shun us because they know that the taint of being associated with the alt-right would lose them status and income. So it does appear that John Vance cannot make out his accusation against me of being hypocritical. But he is perhaps the person, the vice-ridden person, paying me the tribute, because he is far more hypocritical, because I at least engage in political activism and I have laid out my plan. I'm saying that secular Quranism is not going to be considered attractive until I have proven that I'm sorry, I just have to stop it vibrating, my phone. I'm not so naive as to think that people are going to say, secular Quranism? What a super idea. Let's all take it up at once. I know that I would be faced with resistance, obstruction, threats, bribes, all of which I've already encountered, but I have carried on. I have not diluted the principles of secular Quranism, and I'm certainly not going to say I'm going to cherry pick bits of the Quran that I like and ignore the others. I mean, obviously the bits that I don't understand I cannot implement, but to the extent that I am aware of what the verse says and what its benefits would be, I'm going to say, yeah, I'll have to go by the book. I'm following the book. And if you don't like my interpretation, that's too bad, Muslims. But, it's not like your interpretation has, stood you in good stead, has it? You're all, second-class citizens in the West treated like suspected terrorists and suspected pedophiles and suspected groomers of pedophile rings. So I don't think that your interpretation has worked for you. So why not argue the toss with me? But no, they will just melt away when asked to argue their point. So I win again, don't I? So as I was saying, the principle of a political activist is to practice political activism. And I think I do this every day. I don't ever back down from a debate, unless it is with somebody called Bedpan, who has nothing to say anyway, apart from his paused libertarianism. So John Vance, what's he been doing? He's been learning Arabic, saying his prayers in Arabic, and declining to point out that Christianity is kaput, because he doesn't want to offend his political associates. Not that they're even Christian, but that they identify as Christian. And The problem I have with Christianity is this: they are the supreme hypocrites of all. Because what could be worse than saying that no one else can practice idolatry, but they can. And not only do they practice idolatry, they practice supreme idolatry. They're saying that an executed revolutionary is the co-equal of the supreme and eternal Abrahamic God, which is patently an absurdity, but they've been getting away with it for 2,000 years. And how do you think they've gotten away with it? Through the use of state intimidation and violence. You've heard of the Inquisition, you've heard of the Crusades, you've heard of the Christian practice of burning heretics at the stake. So if you think Christians are nicey, happy, clappy people, you don't know the history. You don't know the bloody history of Christianity. You haven't heard of the European wars of religion. You haven't heard of the wars of Reformation. You don't know the implication of Henry VIII's break from Rome. You don't understand your own history, and your problem is that you never learnt it. So you can't even begin to argue about it. So all you think is, all you're left with is to go back to what? The 1950s, when things, well, from television memory, everything was bright and clean, wholesome. Of course, you won't be talking about the war or the wars, the 2 world wars. Now, what was that about? If you go to any Christian war memorial, you will find that all these men died for the glory of God. Go to Windsor, go to any war memorial in England. All these men died not for British foreign policy, not for British imperialism, but for the glory of God. Is that hypocrisy or not? So, I think the Christians should be called out. I think John Vance should heed the commandment in chapter 18, verse 4 of the book he now is supposed to follow, but he won't do it. But he accuses me, of all people, of hypocrisy when he is too cowardly to offend his political associates who are not even Christian. So that is the interesting thing, that his political associates, if you ask them about the Trinity, they won't know what you're on about. Will they? The working classes tend not to know about theological matters. They don't tend to care about them. They don't tend to believe in God. What does it mean to identify as Christians? I mean, what they're saying when they talk about identifying as Christians is that they hate mosques. They hate the very fact that Muslims are in their country. And why are Muslims in their country? Because their religion is kaput, because Christianity is kaput, and democracy is dementia, but they cling to the very thing that has destroyed their society. They are, well, it strikes me that they are rather like a drunk clinging to his bottle. It is, of course, a bottle that is the source of his problems, but the drunkard will be blaming his job, his wife, his family, his parents. So that's the way it is, I suppose. You can't really take the hypocrisy out of a Christian, because John was originally a Christian, and he will feel an affinity to anyone Christian, and he will be always conflicted with not upsetting his friends and family and his political associates, and he can't stick to the principle of the book that he is now supposed to be following. Of course, I understand that we are all at times conflicted. There's something that tells us we should do something, and there's something else telling us that we shouldn't. And that really is the purpose of having a supreme authority that tells us we must always be doing this, or whatever. So the supreme authority, the hypothetical supreme authority, if you're atheist or agnostic, would be the Abrahamic God, and from him emanates laws for us in order for us to order our actions. Just because it is to be expected that we will be conflicted, that will, we can imagine the simplest situation of a child with two parents arguing, one parent saying that the child is to do one thing, and the other parent saying that the child is to do another. So who is the child to choose? It will, if it's forced to decide, it will probably decide on the basis of which parent it loves more, which parent it relies on more, or its own interests. If it's going to be a divorce, which parent gets to keep the house, gets to keep the bigger house, gets to, and which school it will be going to, if one parent is going to go far, far away from the other. So we are always in conflict with the principles that we're supposed to follow and our own immediate personal interest. So which one do you think John Vance is following? Which is the short-termist, and which is the long-termist? The people in the chat wanted to talk about coronavirus. Well, I don't know what you expect from me. What do you think I can say about the coronavirus that going to be new and different? I don't care. If we're going to die, we're going to die. But I don't think we're all going to die. I mean, that's the thing, that's why I've been, pointing out that the bubonic plague never killed Europeans, even though a third of them died, according to Connaught. I'm not going to stop talking about hypocrisy. You can all go away if you want, but I'm just getting into my stride. So hypocrisy is defined as a situation in which someone pretends to believe something that they do not really believe, or that is the opposite of what they do or say at another time. So I think I've proven the hypocrisy of John Vance. He's projecting. That's another thing. You're in a situation of being the pot calling the kettle black, and that is another way of saying that you're projecting. You're actually guilty of the very thing that you're accusing the other person of. And why does John want to accuse me of hypocrisy? Because he thinks it's a bad thing, and he is himself guilty of it, because the only reason why he wants to abandon proper political activism is because he doesn't want to alienate his new community, and he probably thought that his Muslims are going to support him, but they just want to be spiritual. They don't want to talk politics because that will just get them into trouble. So they're going to shut up about politics. So and if he goes on about politics, his new Muslim community will kick him out. But and they probably know about secular Quranism, and they'll say, well, you better stay away from that woman, John, because she's talking politics, and we don't want to talk about politics because we want to be left alone. If we do, the Canadian authorities will raid our mosques, or take our children away, or whatever it is that they can do to Muslims in the UK. So he's the one who's compromised now. I probably could have said, well, John, if you're going to be joining this lot, you have to bear certain things in mind, that that they're not as political as you like to think they are. Quite often, a lot of them, they are cowards. Actually, all of them that I can think of are cowards. They're not actually going to be saying anything, because things happen to them when they say stuff. So it's like, look, I'm doing it for you. Why can't you at least be supportive and say, well, I can't support you because of my current personal circumstances. But I'll support you by not attacking you. But it doesn't matter. I'm really okay about it. As I can see, the way I see it is a development. It is a development in that people will think, ooh, that means secular Quranism is kaput. Now, is it kaput? Because somebody who has got himself into a position of no longer wanting to talk politics feels he cannot give up the illusory things that he thinks he has acquired by converting to Islam. Well, I could have warned him about it. I mean, that's why I knew that would come along. If you want to join a new group, you will have to stick to their rules, and if you stick to their rules, then you are no longer able to operate independently. And of course, it is my entire strategy to, put a clear line between my kind of Sharia and their kind of Sharia to show its distinctiveness. So, it's great that these Muslims that John has associated himself with hate and fear secular Quranism and don't want to talk about it, and have probably persuaded him to distance himself from me. And he has acceded to their requests because they have promised to send him to learn about Islam. I get it. So really, in politics, you do have to be capable of independent thought. You should be able to see, potential situations where you're going to get compromised. You can explore, ideas, but as long as you, don't walk into, you can walk around a trap, but you don't have to walk into it. But he's young, and maybe he'll learn if he admits his mistakes. It may not even be a mistake for him to, if he doesn't feel able to pursue his political activism, then for personal, social, employment reasons, and fair enough. But I'm still able to. I'm not going to stop. And I'm just waiting for people to tell me exactly the nature of my hypocrisy. There is a verse in the Koran about hypocrisy, and I will consider that before I finish this stream. So, I mean, it's called munafiq. So there is a Muslim definition of it, which is rather different to the non-Muslim definition. So munafiq is obviously an Arabic word that says people who pretend to believe but inwardly don't. Okay, let me read it out. In Islam, the munafiqeen, or false Muslim, were a group decried in the Quran as outward Muslims who were inwardly concealing disbelief and actively sought to undermine the Muslim community. Munafiq is a person who, in public and community, shows that he is a Muslim but rejects Islam or propagates against it either in his heart or among enemies of Islam. The hypocrisy itself is called nifaq. So types of hypocrisy: hypocrisy towards God regarding actual faith, hypocrisy towards the tenets of faith. For example, somebody may believe in God, Judgment Day, accounting, scales of deeds and hellfire with an uncertainty and doubt, but not fear them at all, in actual or not refrain from committing sins because of them. Yet he claims, I fear God. Hypocrisy towards others: somebody is double-faced and double-tongued. He praises someone in their presence, then behind their back he denounces them and tries to cause them pain and harm them. Okay, that is part of my definition of hypocrisy anyway. The Quran has many verses discussing munafiqeen, referring to them as more dangerous to Muslims than the worst non-Muslim enemies of Islam. Well, yeah, the enemy within is always more harmful than the identified enemy whom you can see on the other side of the battle lines. But of course, the enemy is within is an analogy that can extend to, well, this idea that you're your own worst enemy. And you can't see it, obviously. You can't see your, I guess, what the Jews would call your Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination. I'll have a look at the actual chapter on hypocrites. It's chapter 63. So I think it's all kind of, what's the word? Okay, I'll read it and then I'll tell you what I think. So, starting from chapter 63, verse 1, when the hypocrites come to you, O Muhammad, they say, we testify that you are the messenger of Allah, and Allah knows that you are his messenger, and Allah testifies that all hypocrites are liars. Verse 2, they have taken their oath as a cover, so they averted people from the way of Allah. Indeed, it was evil that they were doing. So I think it's kind of stuck in time, really. Not that many verses. Okay, there's just 11, so I'll read them all out to you. Verse 3. That is because they believed and then they disbelieved, so their hearts were sealed over and they do not understand. And when you see them, their forms please you, and if they speak, you listen to their speech. They are as if they were pieces of wood propped up. They think that every shout is against them. They are the enemy, so beware of them. May Allah destroy them. How are they deluded? And when it is said to them, come, the messenger of Allah will ask forgiveness for you, they turn their heads aside, and you see them invading while they are arrogant. It is all the same for them whether you ask forgiveness for them and do not ask forgiveness for them. Never will Allah forgive them. Indeed, Allah does not guide the defiantly disobedient people. They are the ones who say, do not spend on those who are with the messenger of Allah until they disband. And to Allah belongs the depositories of the heavens and the earth, but the hypocrites do not understand. They say, if we return to Al-Madinah, the more honoured for power will surely expel therefrom the more humble, and to Allah belongs all honour, and to his messenger, and to the believers, but the hypocrites do not know. O you who have believed, let not your wealth and your children divert you from remembrance of Allah, and whoever does that, then those are the losers. And spend in the way of Allah from what we have provided you before death approaches one of you, and he says, my Lord, if only you would delay me for a brief term, so I would give charity to be among the righteous. But never will Allah delay a soul when its time has come, and Allah is acquainted with what you do. So, on the one hand, you might think these people are specific to time and place, to the ones who played Muhammad with their prevarication, which is basically what it is. A hypocrite is double-minded. He confuses things. He confuses himself, so he doesn't have to do the thing he doesn't want to do. He gives himself excuses. He says on the one hand this, on the other hand that, better not Ben, and he makes promises he can't keep or won't keep or never intended to keep. I'm afraid we've all done these things in our lives, haven't we? So it's basically saying we, those of us who understand what the rules are but find it difficult to keep to them constantly, we fall into this chasm of double-mindedness. And worst of all, we do this thing of calling the pot kettle, of being the pot kettle calling the pot. Sorry, the pot calling the kettle black. So, what is the solution to hypocrisy? Well, moral courage, I would have thought. Or, if John, for his own personal reasons, feels he cannot. Okay, I'm not going to speculate on why he's doing this. I really have to think, it's all for the best. It's given me the opportunity of dealing with his accusations of hypocrisy. It has given you this video on hypocrisy. No doubt it is a subject that I will be returning to again and again and again. And the cause of hypocrisy is, of course, a desire for status, as well as a combination of a desire for status of that and fear of God, or fear of the consequences of not appearing to be sticking up, to be sticking to the rules that you've said that you're going to be. You said you would support. Now, in the case of John, what are the rules that he says he's going to be operating under? I mean, obviously, he's not going to be operating under the rules of secular Koranism, so he's operating under the rules of what, the Canadian Nationalist Party? I guess the leader doesn't want John to be supporting secular Koranism, or his new Muslim community don't want him to be supporting secular Koranism. So what are the reasons? Okay, for the Canadian Nationalist Party, it would be because they don't like Islam. And don't want him to be supporting it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be associated with it. And they don't want, maybe they don't like me saying that Christianity is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy and Christianity walk hand in hand and have done so for millennia, because it is Christians who call non-Christians heathens, and and heathens are basically idolaters, but they are the greatest idolaters of all, because they worship an executed revolutionary as the co-equal of God, and it is clearly absurd, but they don't get it or refuse to get it. And if you argue with them, or if you argued with them in the olden days, they would use state intimidation to torture you, as they tortured the Jews and Muslims who lived in Spain. And if you are yourself a Christian, they would burn you at the stake, as they did Michael Servetus in Geneva, because that was how Christians behaved when they took their religion seriously. They burned each other at the stake. They forcibly converted Jews and Muslims and tortured them, and invited them for debates. To put Jews in a terrible position of wanting to defend the principles of their religion, but knowing that if they won the debate, they would have to suffer punishment. And so this is so Jews were called to Notre Dame to engage in this debate about. I can look it up for you. Yeah, it's called the Disputation of Paris. And last year, a rabbi said the Notre Dame fire was retribution for the Talmud burning of the 13th century. That the Disputation of Paris. So well, they say this, Shlomo Aviner, I don't know how to pronounce his name properly. Anyway, so Chancellor of Israel says he's known for his extremist views, and said it was divine retribution for the mass burning of Talmud volumes by French Catholic priests in the city 8 centuries earlier. So retribution doesn't come immediately, but it can come centuries later. So people who say they believe in God should, have a care. Just because you got away with it this century doesn't mean you'll get away with it next century or even the next. It'll come back to haunt you. So let me find you what it says. So, basically the Times of Israel is saying, what a terrible person this Shlomo rabbi is Shlomo Aviner. But let's go back 8 centuries to find out what the Disputation of Paris was all about, which ended in the Talmud being burnt. Do you think it was a Christian saying, yeah, we know these Jews are clever, we know, and they'll win the argument, and then we will revenge ourselves on these Jews who won the argument by burning their Talmud. What fun! So, the Disputation of Paris, also known as the trial of the Talmud, so basically a Jewish convert to Christianity, he basically betrayed his own former community, and then he said, there are 35 things in the Talmud that you Christians would get really angry about. So 4 rabbis had to defend the Talmud against this Jewish convert's accusation. So the Catholic Church at the time was trying to win new converts, and I guess they were just rewarding Jews who converted to Christianity. After the works of Thomas Aquinas and people like that, saying that the Trinity is true, you better believe it or else. So we don't know what the 35 charges were. So so one of the infamous passages of the Talmud, as those of us who know a little about such things, would be that there's a passage in the Talmud that says someone named Jesus was sent to hell to be boiled in excrement for eternity. It's all a bit complicated. Anyway, the outcome was that the Talmud was burnt. But I guess, in those days they, didn't have this idea of saying, we'll just agree to disagree. How would I have gotten out of trouble? Okay, I'll just see if I can find out what they get. So he's saying, okay. Obviously, this one about Jesus boiling in excrement in hell for all eternity would be found offensive to, these Christians who worship Jesus as the co-equal of God. I suppose they could say, well, it's just the Talmud is not God's word. It's possible some of these rabbis made a mistake. We're not going to pretend that all rabbis who said anything in the Talmud was were correct in every regard, and the animosity rabbis might have felt towards Jesus was because he created a new religion, whether he meant to or not. that resulted in the supreme blasphemy of Gentiles worshipping an executed revolutionary as the co-equal of God, which is blasphemous to us Jews. It could have been an argument. And then the other one is something about Adam copulating with each of the animals before finding Eve. And that Noah, according to the Talmudic legends, was castrated by his son Ham. It was common for Christians to equate the religion of the Jews with the Mosaic faith of the Old Testament. So the church was surprised to realize that the Jews had developed an authoritative Talmud to complement their understanding of the Bible. I'm sorry, I don't even know what this all means. I don't know what the last sentence that I just read out to you means. Okay. Well, I mean, that's all. I mean, I don't know. It's a shame that the Wikipedia entry doesn't mention all the 35 charges, because I would have liked to have known a bit more about them. Okay, I will finally answer the question of Cassandra O'Hara, who says, Claire, do you believe in a God, the spirit world, or the supernatural? Now, I'm saying I'm quite happy to follow the rules of the Abrahamic God as expressed in the Koran. The ones that say, do this, don't do this. I'm not Muslim, and there are parts that will apply only to Muslims, and those that, and of course, non-Muslims will be allowed to do their thing, such as eat pork. So what I propose is this. There'll be the commandments and prohibitions of the Quran, and obviously the ones that apply to Muslims will apply to Muslims, and with the for the non-Muslims living in such a secular Quran state, only the rules pertaining to the no-hide laws would be applied to them. But obviously the ones on taxation, which is 20% flat rate income tax, that will apply to all, whether they like it or not. I mean, I don't think, people get to choose the rate of taxation. So now inheritance, that's going to be a bit complicated. So I'm going to give freedom of disposition to non-Muslims, but obviously the Muslims who want to follow the Muslim inheritance laws, which are immensely complicated, will do their thing. I really do enjoy these detailed legalistic questions that I occasionally get, which shows some understanding of my idea, and some desire to examine it more closely. So that's what I'm hoping for. With regard to secular Quranism, do I believe in God? So I'm saying I kind of I'm inclining towards belief, but I have to hold on to my position of agnosticism, because I think that is necessary to get the punters in, really. In that, if I'm in the middle, then I control both sides of the debate. So agnosticism will be my official position. And I've said before that my faith is like a traffic light going from doubt to belief to doubt to, no, how does it go? Belief, doubt, disbelief, doubt, belief, doubt, disbelief, in that kind of order. Well, not necessarily in that kind, but I'm just saying, it doesn't even matter what I think, it's just that I've stated all my principles. My principles are the principles of secular Quranism, and, those of you who know what they are, or, can hold me to it, and that's the whole point of having principles. You state your principles, and I'm afraid, people don't even understand the purpose of principles anymore. They don't state them, or if they do, they change them, and they don't see anything wrong in, when they change their principles. So, I honestly can't see how I have in any way gone against any of my principles. So I'm saying John Vance has falsely accused me of hypocrisy. I invite him to give me further and better particulars of my claim of hypocrisy, but I'm suggesting that he's the one who is hypocritical, because he's the one who has abandoned political activism in favor of learning Arabic and snuggling up to his new Muslim community, who have urged him to give up his political activism. So he's the one who's projecting, and he's the one who's he's the one who's holding back, because he doesn't want to offend all these Christians. And I'm just saying, look, if you want these Westerners to give up their current system, you have to prove that their current system of Christianity and democracy is kaput. So you have to keep saying that, don't you? Otherwise, they'll just reject everything and say, "Oh, it's fine. Christianity is lovely. It's working. Look at it." All divorces, all illegitimate, all single-parent households. Yeah, it's working great. Getting stupider. Economy tanking. Yeah, it's working. So, basically, make up your mind. Make up your mind which way it is that you're going. So John is basically conflicted between the call of his new Muslim community and his desire to be a political activist. The desire to be an effective political activist. He doesn't like the fact that I don't hate Jews. That he seems to resent me for having a dialogue with rabbis. And I suppose so do his new Muslim community. He doesn't want to be, I guess, okay, I know that Greater Israel is a bit touchy for these Muslims and Jews, but, well, I want to talk about it. I'm going to have to say that secular Quranism might have a contribution to make in the establishment of Greater Israel. So I'm going to talk about it. So if John doesn't want to talk about it because he doesn't want to cause offense, then yeah, that's up to him. But he's the one being hypocritical about being a political activist. And I guess that's all I have to say on the matter. Thank you all for listening. And you won't get any more new information from me about the coronavirus, simply because it's still my view that, okay, a few people have died. I still think it's an overreaction. Just because a few people have died doesn't mean you have to destroy all these businesses who were relying on Chinese New Year for, probably their year's profits. So, yeah, and then the Chinese are neurotic because they're all parents of only one child, and that's why they're pulling out all the stops to, contain it. Because if they had more than one, they wouldn't be quite so neurotic about losing their only kid. So I think operating behind the hysteria is this, and of course being atheists, that they will be terrified of death, as atheists would be. Oh, there was a video I wanted to watch. I mean, it was something called what was it? I think I put it on my Facebook wall. Come to my Facebook wall if you can't get enough of me and want to talk to me when I'm not actually streaming. So there's a new video by by CGTN, the Chinese broadcasting, the Chinese TV basically, and it says Chinese people pray for a bright future for Wuhan. Now that's interesting, because if you're an atheist, can you pray or not? Or is prayer basically an involuntary cry of help? We don't know, do we? I may do a stream about the definition of prayer and discuss whether atheists can pray or not. Just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you don't really, 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 really want things to happen that are completely outside your power. So, which explains the saying that there are no atheists in foxholes. But I've been talking long enough. Thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon.